Today we're talking to Juan Carlos VillaTorro in Gainesville, Florida. Now, I've known Juan Carlos for a few years now, and I've always been attracted to his out-of-the-box thinking and how he actually approaches the problem. So we'll talk a little bit about that and see where he's going. Juan Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rob. So over the years, I've known Rob, and he's been a mentor to me and has helped me guide through areas that were unknown in the area of education and higher ed and in business. So I want to define what my current status is as a PhD candidate at the University of Florida. And it's at the Environmental Engineering College. And the focus of this is, how do we truly give plastic a place in this planet that doesn't cause harmful effects? And we use what energy value it has so that it could be used for a beneficial purpose. And any remnants that remains from the plastic in the ash form, what's there? What could be reused? Such as the metals left behind, which there are a large amount of metals left behind and minerals that could be used as raw material in its specific industry. That's where I am today at the University of Florida. So go Gators! And how I ended up here was, what gets me going, why I do this is, we only have one planet. And when you hear lately a lot of visionaries that are looking to explore into different parts of the universe, such as let's inhabit Mars, it doesn't make sense to me, because we haven't even figured out how to live in this planet in harmony, rather than just destroy and we believe for some reason that the planet is ours to do what we please, which I disagree with that. I think that the planet is for us to inhabit, and that we should live in harmony with it. And we can live in harmony. We can be technologically advanced, while at the same time taking care of the water that feeds everyone, not just humans. And that's sort of why I do this. How I got going in this route was, I attended the University of North Florida in Jacksonville, and I followed a track to where the university allowed me to build my own degree focused on sustainability, with an emphasis on electronic recycling. And as an undergraduate student, I set out to get a degree and at the same time start a company that would be truly focused on meeting a balance to where environment is just as important as profit. Because if you're not profitable, you don't have a business. But for some reason, the way I was telling my story did not help raise the money that I was after, which, at the time it was like $16 million. So here's this undergraduate student who's never built one of those sites, asking for that much money. And this is in 2009, so a few months after the bubble burst and the Great Recession started. So there weren't too many people with an appetite for the unknown, especially investing in someone that was completely unknown and viewed and he did things out of the box. So after years and years of trying to raise that money to start the company and unsuccessful at it, I realized that I was telling the story wrong. I was focused on, hey, let's take care of this environment. It's good for you, it's good for everyone, and we'll be able to produce revenue out of what comes out of the electronics. But what I wasn't telling was how much money it generates, how there's so much gold and silver and copper. And once I shifted the story and did not put aside the environment, but rather said, hey, this is financially viable. This is why I can do it. I'm doing it in a small scale. Take a look at it. And it changed everything. The shift in how the opportunity opened up for me from different investors became such that I had a few options on which route to go. And all it was a shift on telling the story. So storytelling is very important. And I like storytelling. I'm not good at it, but I'm working on it to get good at it. So it's been since 2009 to now that the company have seen different phases. We are focused on recycling electronics for medium to enterprise level businesses. And out of that, we have a social program that on the social aspect, it focuses on how can we benefit communities that normally wouldn't have access to this type of technology, either purchase at low rates or we would subsidize the entire cost of access to that technology. So that's the business is called urban mining. And we're in partnership with the University of Florida in order to have a balance between how to produce a revenue out of material that was already destined to go into a landfill, reuse it or repurpose it or recycle it in a way that we know the downstream is truly doing what they claim they're doing, and not just greenwashing. Greenwashing means when a company says that they're 100% landfill free, but a big portion of their post-industrial material does end up in a landfill. So that's greenwashing, and it's very difficult because you spend a lot of time and resources on figuring out, is this company truly doing what they're doing? Most of the time, if they get sent outside of the United States, it becomes more difficult, especially in the Asia area, which most of the electronics tend to go in that direction. That's the background of where I am and how did I get there from an educational point of view to a business that's thriving.
Well, it's really interesting, Juan Carlos, is, in the Wash Club, we really focus on taking contaminants out of the water stream and making the water clean to drink. Our issues are concerned about sanitation on the fecal contamination side. What you're doing really is you're trying to address the waste before it actually gets in the water stream. And obviously on your side, it's really more of the inorganics, the pollutants that get into the waste stream, but it's still very relevant because that also gets into the waste stream, and it is a contaminant that we've got to worry about.
Yes, there's a research that came out this month of October 2017 that it's quite alarming by addressing and highlighting how plastic has broken down to such a small particle size that now clams and oysters are eating it. So that's pretty worrisome, because most of the filtration systems throughout the world that are used for clean water purposes do not filter out the plastic, because the plastic happens to be so small. So you would say, okay, it's so small, so what? Well, if the clams are eating it and they're not digesting it and it ends up accumulating in their stomachs, whoever eats the clam next, which I happen to love clams and oysters, I'll be digesting plastic as well. And my body is not digesting it. Is it accumulating in my stomach? just as you see humpback whales surface. And when they open them up, there's hundreds of pounds of plastic stuck in their stomach. Or you see the albatross in the North Pacific patch, in the North Pacific island, that due to the vortex of the North Pacific garbage patch, they're digesting plastic and they're dying. So it is very important in our end of the recycling industry to address that point and reduce, or maybe hopefully one day not have any of that plastic go into the water, into the water flow to begin with. And how do you do that? It has to make financial sense.
You know, it's really interesting. Your electronic waste story is a great story. It really does. But you know, you and I met initially at the University of North Florida, and you were doing a social good project that involved renovating shipping containers into computer labs and sending them on over to the Dominican Republic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in addition to trying to start a company and raise $16 million, which I didn't do, by the way, I had the company, without producing any revenue, had already a corporate social program, which was called CEL, C-E-L, which stands for Connect, Educate, Lead. And it was focused on, as an undergraduate student, what are the things that you can contribute to where you can put the theories that you're learning in an educational form into practice. And what better place to see if those theories are applicable, or if they don't work, then while you get a chance to go back to your professors and say, hey, you know, what we talked about last time, it's functioning and I'm able to make it work. For example, an electrical engineering student, for his senior design, he designed in this computer lab that Rob talked about, he designed the solar power system. He drew it out in the schematic form and then ended up doing the installation of it. We tested it out on campus for a few weeks. It worked. We disassembled it and put it back inside the shipping container. And after other students participating, we're able to get some of the funds so we can ship this to a remote area in the Dominican Republic. We ended up there with a group of, I think it was like 17 students, Rob, and yourself, and as a adult with experience, and not a bunch of undergraduate students running without knowing what to do. And thank you for your guidance, you and Tommy Grower, by the way. And we ended up installing a computer lab in this remote area of the Dominican Republic that had electricity. From the day that we installed the computer lab, they had electricity for about 8 years. So this is a community that went in less than 10 years from no electricity to their students, their children, which is the future, learning about different lessons plans using Khan Academy. Now, that's pretty impressive because at the time, which I think, by the way, still to this day, the education system in the United States hasn't figured out how to truly integrate Khan Academy. Here's this village in the Dominican Republic in 2012 giving lesson plans on computer literacy, financial literacy, computer programming, basics of mathematics using Khan Academy. I think that's pretty cool. And at the same time, those students, if they're able to learn about modern methods without having to leave their communities, is it possible that the root cause for immigration is that there's a need? But what if that need is satisfied with them through education in those areas, and the students are empowered to start businesses or go into existing businesses with the knowledge in the local form, and hey, this is how you could improve a place that might be producing vegetables. How can you take this into market? And that's sort of what the computer lab ended up and continues to do in that region. And it was a pilot. It ended up getting attention from an NGO situated in Jacksonville, to where they took it on to a whole different level and spread it throughout the region in the Caribbean base. And World Bank wrote a check so they could build 283 schools in several countries, which is Haiti, Guyana, Jamaica. And the total grant was for about $90 million. So bottom line is, it is possible for us to put theories as students in universities. You don't have to be a student, but you can put theories into practice and take them into the marketplace as a functioning pilot, and partner with people who have genuine interest on making the world a better place. And it's doable.
You know, what was really interesting, you sort of alluded to it, that you had engineering students working on the schematics on the electronics side. But at the same time, it was multidisciplinary, because you had students from the School of Business working on the logistics with Crowley Engineering, which is the transport company that got the container from Jacksonville to the Dominican Republic. You also had the School of Education working on the education component. And so really, for the most part, it was more than just, a single disciplinary project. You actually realize that issues like that, and especially in the Dominican Republic or any developing country, are really multidisciplinary problems. That it's not just an engineering issue, it's also a management issue, it's also an education issue, and things like that.
And there's only 24 hours in a day, and if you try to do everything yourself, you won't get anything done of substance within a certain time frame, or especially if you're limited on funds, which we were as undergraduate students. Most of us tend to have a lot of financial problems. So taking that approach by integrating different colleges into the program, the students were able to put into practice what they were learning. And at the same time, this is pretty fascinating. When we were on our way to the Dominican Republic, and the shipping container had already arrived, the 17 or 19 students that were going to help deploy and run lesson plans, they each one, depending on what they studied, they had a program that they were going to go out and teach. It turns out that most of the students, including myself, ended up realizing that what we were going out there to teach was completely wrong. And most of the work we ended up learning and taking from the community so much knowledge that if we had that knowledge, if we had to gain that knowledge on campus, one, it wouldn't have happened because it's enclosed. It's kind of like a campus bubble. But at the same time, it was real life, and choices had to be made within a 2-week period. And egos had to be put aside. And it's like, how do you work that from a leadership point of view? When you let someone grow, even though they're doing it wrong, kind of like what Rob would see us, and he would just laugh at me and say, "Oh my God, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I'll let you learn." And then later we'll go through a debrief, and then I'll let you know how much you screwed up. But you're not screwing up in the form that you're hurting someone, but there are different ways to do things. And sometimes it feels you're doing it harder, but you believed in me, and we got it done. And to this day, it's 5 years later, the computer lab is completely functioning, self-sustained on its own. And financially, the community has taken over. So that's a lot to say, because many programs, once the NGOs or the groups that come in and implement it leave, the programs tend to die we were fortunate that the community took ownership from the very beginning and participated, and now it's fully functioning.
You know, it's really funny because I always joke with my volunteers that when they go into a country, they always take baggage. It's not necessarily the clothes they bring. It's really
Yes.
their egos and their stereotypes. You know, one thing I didn't mention about the project, though, is that you also got the container from the School of Construction at the university. And that's how we were able to acquire that. Plus the fact that you were able to get the university to donate a lot of the furnishing and equipment that went into the container. And that was really exciting.
In the shipping container.
Right.
Yes.
So we also did another project there. We were actually working with a gentleman that had a very large pepper farm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So his name is Frank, and Frank is a very interesting, self-taught gentleman that he's hands-on, and he reads something and just jumps on it to see how he makes it work. A lot of it doesn't work, but the things that do work, he scales it significantly. So when we were looking at the computer lab, what is the computer lab? The computer lab is an opportunity so that the youth has they have an access to modern teaching, modern learning. But what's the point of getting educated to such degree if there are no opportunities? That's where Frank and his greenhouses come to effect. And we asked Frank, this is what we're doing, but are there any job opportunities for any of the children that might have an interest on working with you? And he said, sure. And you know, for a business owner that's starting out, it's a hard ask. That's basically you're asking someone, will you teach me how to run your business where you can potentially generate your own competition? But this man looked at something bigger than just his greenhouses. He looked at, hey, those kids are the future. So he gave us the opportunity to see how we can work. And he asked for three things if we can help. He said, can you help export this red pepper to the United States? Can you help me learn about organic farming? And how can I reduce the cost for fertilizer production? So, you know, when we were there, I said, Frank, I don't know how to do any of those, but give us some time and we'll figure it out. Came back to the States, asked around for help, and there's this professor at the University of Florida. Her name is Dr. Ann Wilkie. She had done extensive research in biodigesters. Thanks to Rob, he convinced her to give us a day and time. A strong Irish lady, by the way. She basically said, if you bring those farmers to my lab, I will make the time and share what I can and know as far as how to build a biodigester, how to maintain it, and make sure that the microorganisms stay alive and do what they're intended to do, what they want to do, which is eat the biomass that's thrown into the pools. So we spent about a week at UF learning from Dr. Wilkie how to do that. On Friday, Frank finishes that week, leaves to the Dominican Republic, gets there, and Saturday morning, he sent us pictures that he was starting to break ground on building this biodigester. So it's very impressive how this guy, you know, like he really took the knowledge that was shared and put it into practice. Fast forward now, the greenhouses are completely self-sustained in the sense of water irrigating at the same time as being fed through the same irrigation system, the effluent that comes from a biodigester, and it's all organic to the point that the yields, the seeds that Frank was using, it's called F1 from Monsanto. Chose Monsanto because it's very difficult to tell what's organic. except that you pay a higher price on organic route if you get an organic seed. But you can't really verify it is organic. But nevertheless, we got the F1 Monsanto seed, and their disclaimer was that you would get 30 to 32 peppers in a 6-month period, and that they would weigh somewhere between half a pound to 3/4 of a pound using their fertilizer. As it turns out, using organic fertilizer from pig, cow, chicken, and rice husk, we ended up with a yield in a 6-month period that was between 36 to 38 peppers, and they weighed between 3/4 of a pound to a pound per pepper. Now, it's very easy to look at the mathematics as far as financial business. His increase was somewhere around like 30% on minimum. His fertilizer, he no longer had to buy the fertilizer because it came from the biomass that was produced in his farm. So that's savings right there. Also, in the sense of can we get the produce down to the United States, imported into the United States? Publix was kind enough to give us the audience, and they said, sure, we'll love to test out your red peppers. We'll have to go through a certification process, but they could be done. Will you be able to sustain 7 to 8 truckloads per week? Now, the response that was, no, we could do that maybe every 2 months. It's small scale. And they ended up saying, well, you know, we need 7 to 8. Can you sustain it? We said no, but when we can, we'll come back. I go back to Frank with the news and say, Frank, Publix said yes, but you got to produce this much. And Frank doesn't have the means at the time to scale that fast. So Frank got very creative and managed during festivals or any type of event that was happening within his local community to make dishes with red pepper cut into it and give out meals for free, because it turns out that the red pepper was not part of the diet of the Dominican population in that community. Fast forward now in 2007, Frank has scaled about 4 times larger than that. So at the time he had 20,000 square meters. So 4 times that, it's a significant amount. But he's not looking into exporting the red pepper anymore because he managed to get the red pepper into the eating diet of his community. So that's part of the noise. Someone's pretty insistent in calling. So that's pretty impressive in the time frame that Frank has managed to produce a truly organic red pepper with higher yields and impact his community to put that into their diet. That's a part of the program.
You know, what was really exciting about the project itself for me was the fact that it was a closed loop system. I mean, you took something that was really a waste, and that waste would go into the water stream, which is actually the livestock waste, coming from the pigs and the cows and all that stuff. Took it to a biodigester, which broke it down, made it effluent, which was actually sent in to the greenhouses for the peppers, and through a drip system.
Yes.
And fed the peppers. At the same time, the design was to capture the methane of the biodigester and
Yes.
use gas from the methane to actually provide fuel to the ovens to a bakery that actually was supposed to make bread for the community. So really, in a way, it was a closed loop system. So it took what was going to be a waste, something that could get into the water stream, like, again, fecal contamination, and use the products, whether it's the solids going to the effluent to the drip system for the green peppers, or the gases from the methane and using that for the ovens. I mean, it took the whole thing, just like it's sort of a what we refer to as biomimicry. It takes
Yes.
what nature does in real life, which waste is not really waste; it's actually recycled back into the system. And it takes that whole concept and brings it into a pepper farm that becomes more productive than the typical chemical engineering, Monsanto fertilizing, and even the fertilizer becomes a waste product, and you've got this big mess on your hands. So that was what was really appealing to me in the whole concept.
Yes.
You know, getting back to this whole thing, and we're going to probably have to wrap this up pretty soon, but what's exciting about what's happening is we've talked about electronic waste. That was sort of your focus now on your doctoral program. Moved over to talking about, you know, containers, multidisciplinary teams trying to solve a problem, which actually brings education to a developing country, to kids in the middle of nowhere, learning what kids in developed countries learn, and actually have the capacity to go from there to college, whether it's in management or even engineering, and then moved into talking about closed loop systems for farming and all that stuff. So what's really exciting is that, you know, it's really how you begin to address problems and reaching back and finding the core elements of that problem and trying to build a team, whether it's going to be the various students, electrical engineering students to the management students, all that stuff, or it's going with Dr. Wilkie and beginning to figure out how you do closed loop systems. And it's something we really refer to as problem seeking, but you're not really trying to solve a problem yet. You're really trying to find what the problem truly is and then begin to build a solution around that problem. So I think from my side, Juan Carlos, that's the exciting thing about what you're doing. And really, in a way, what your contribution is to the E-Wash Fund.
I wish to contribute towards this interdisciplinary approach that you guys are setting up. It's quite fascinating to see how many different members from around the world and what those perspectives, using the science that they're trained on. I think that to get all those minds to collaborate, even if it's a handful of them within a specific problem, great solutions will come out for addressing whatever program they're in. I'm focused on the plastic portion to reduce the amount of plastic that goes into the water supply and all of the doping that goes into plastic that ends up leaching into water and soil. And it's all interconnected. When you ask, how do you end up with now studying plastic at a university with electronic recycling and education in a remote area using computer lab? In the one word I would combine and compile everything would be, it's all about sustainability, true sustainability. And in order for it to be sustainable, it needs to make financial sense. For else, we're just going to get together and talk about all the good things we wish to do. But if there is no incentive financially, at the present time, very little gets done. So I wish to contribute towards this group as much as I can. And feel free to contact me.
Well, it's great talking to you. And I'm sure everybody in the club will really find this talk fascinating. Thanks, Juan Carlos.
Thank you. Have a great day, Rob.